Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. My husband had oligospermia, so we decided to try IVF. Before the embryos were synthesized, I caught my husband swapping my eggs for those of his dream lover. I didn't say a word, I just swapped my eggs back. And while I was at it, I swapped his sperm for my ex-boyfriend's. 25 years later, the dream lover showed up at our door, sobbing with tears streaming down her face. Sweet daughter, I'm your real mother. Chapter 1. Roma and I returned home after our overseas trip to explore a medical collaboration project, only to be stunned by the scene in front of us. A crowd of people, including distant relatives we never usually see, had gathered in our home. It looked like a family meeting of some sort, and anyone who didn't know better might have thought we were hosting a grand reunion. The most striking sight was Ava sitting in the middle of the living room, crying her eyes out. Lucas, my wonderful husband, who was rarely ever home, was sitting beside her, holding her tenderly and comforting her in a soft voice. I raised an eyebrow, placed my suitcase aside, and looked at Lucas. What's the special occasion today? Why so lively? Roma followed behind me, her arms crossed, her face full of disdain as she stared at Ava. She had already started to sense who this woman was. My mother-in-law was sitting at the head of the room, her expression grim as if she wanted to speak but held herself back. Before Lucas could respond, Ava suddenly lunged towards Roma, her face full of tears, sobbing, "My sweet daughter, I'm your real mother." Roma deftly stepped aside, her face filled with disgust as if Ava were something filthy. She took a step back and spoke coldly, "My mother's name is Helen. This girl is truly my little sweetheart." I took Roma's hand and gave her a reassuring look. Then I raised my hand and slapped Ava across the face. The crisp sound of the slap echoed throughout the living room. "Don't go around claiming relations," I said coldly, my eyes sharp as knives. Lucas shot to his feet, rushing to Ava's side to help her up. He pointed at me and shouted angrily, "Helen, have you gone mad? How dare you hit Ava?" He raised his hand, looking like he was about to hit me. Roma reacted quickly, stepping forward and giving Lucas a slap of her own. "You dare hit my mother?" Roma's voice wasn't loud, but it carried undeniable authority. Lucas was stunned, both furious and shocked, as he raised his hand to strike Roma. Ava, however, pulled him back, crying with false sincerity, "Lucas, don't hit her. She's our daughter." Her act of maternal concern made me feel like vomiting. Lucas lowered his hand, glaring at Roma with rage. "If it weren't for your birth mother, I would have taught you a lesson today." Roma sneered. "Oh, I'd like to see just what you think you can do." The fierce look in her eyes reminded me so much of my younger self. I felt a surge of satisfaction. This girl truly is the product of my careful upbringing. An elder in the family cleared his throat, trying to calm the chaotic scene. "Everyone quiet down." His deep voice carried an undeniable authority. Everyone gradually quieted down, their eyes focused on him. He looked at Lucas. "Lucas, you called everyone here. What's going on?" Lucas took a deep breath as if mustering the courage. He reached out and put his arm around Ava's shoulder, looking deeply affectionate. "Actually, today I have an important announcement to make." He paused, his gaze sweeping across everyone, finally resting on Roma and me. I watched him silently, wondering what kind of circus act he'd put on this time. "Roma, she's not Helen's biological daughter." Lucas's voice wasn't loud, but it was like a bomb exploding in the living room. Roma turned sharply to look at me, her eyes filled with shock. I gestured for her to stay calm. The surrounding relatives began whispering amongst themselves like sharks that had smelled blood, growing excited and restless. "Back then when we did IVF." Lucas paused as if the words were hard to say. "The doctor said Helen's eggs weren't viable. To spare her feelings about becoming a mother, I used Ava's instead. This idiot not only stole and cheated, but now he's trying to throw dirt on me." Lucas's malicious gaze fell on me as if waiting for me to lose my temper and lash out. But I remained composed, and he was forced to continue his performance. "Today I've gathered everyone here to bear witness." He looked at Ava with deep affection. For Roma to acknowledge her biological mother. The relatives immediately burst into chatter. "Roma isn't Helen's daughter. She should acknowledge her biological mother." That's right, a hen that doesn't lay eggs holding on to the position of wife for so many years. It's time for her to step down. Helen has held control over the family business all these years, and now that the truth is out, it's time for her to leave the company too. Hearing these comments, I sneered inwardly. These scheming relatives, whom I'd pushed out of the company's management and left with only annual dividends to profit from, had long held grudges against me. Now they were happy to see this drama unfold between Lucas and me, hoping it would pave the way for them to return to the company and take a share of the spoils. Roma looked at the greedy eyes of the relatives, her grip on my hand tightening. I said, "Roma is my daughter. She will only ever be my child." My voice wasn't loud, but it was firm and resolute. Ava put on a helpless expression, her voice choking with emotion. "Sister, how long will you continue to deceive yourself?" Chapter 3. I wasn't deceiving myself. Roma truly is my child. Did Lucas and Ava really think they could fool me? Back then, when Lucas was diagnosed with oligospermia, we decided to try IVF. Before the embryos were synthesized, I accidentally caught Lucas and a nurse sneaking around my egg storage locker. I overheard Lucas happily calling Ava, telling her that he had successfully swapped the eggs for hers. I didn't make a scene at the time. I quietly turned around and gave the doctor $1,000,000 to swap the eggs back using the extra ones I had stored. I also kindly asked the doctor to swap Lucas's sperm with that of my ex-boyfriend. On the day the embryos were synthesized, Lucas and I witnessed the miracle together. He was unnaturally happy, probably thinking that it was his and Ava's child. Watching his foolish face, I nearly died of laughter on the inside. All these years watching him act like a fool, doting on Roma, has been beyond satisfying. He tried to deceive me, but instead he ended up unknowingly raising someone else's child for over 20 years. Lucas interrupted my thoughts, mocking me. "You're just stubbornly denying it. Roma may have been born from you, but the egg wasn't yours. Her biological mother is Ava." My tone was calm with a hint of provocation. "Are you daydreaming? If you don't believe me, let's do a paternity test," Lucas said resolutely. "And I want a divorce. You've treated me like a simp, forcing me into marriage. After 25 years with you, I've been more than generous." He had a look of joy when he mentioned divorce. It seemed he had wanted this for a long time. Oh, did he really dare say he had been generous with me? Married to him for 25 years, I might as well have been a widow for 25 years. While I was raising our child alone, he was indulging in romance with Ava. While I fought in the business world to hold up the family name, he was living a lavish life in entertainment venues. But there was one thing he got wrong. I wasn't his simp because I loved him. Marrying him was just a means to gain the title of the young madam and take control of the family business. And now the company is entirely under my control. So Lucas is no longer of any use to me. He knew that after my father-in-law passed away, it was my mother-in-law who had the final say in the family. He invited all the relatives here to pressure her into acknowledging the boy. He was certain that if my mother-in-law agreed to recognize Paul as part of the family, I would have no argument against it. After all, over the past 25 years, he had noticed my deference and devotion to her. Paul was clever and quickly turned to my mother-in-law, bowing respectfully as he called out, "Grandma." My mother-in-law looked at Paul, then at me, her eyes conflicted, but she didn't respond to Paul's greeting right away. I knew she felt for me. Not wanting to make things difficult for her, I broke the awkward silence. "Lucas, having this illegitimate child join the family and inherit the family business is your true goal, isn't it? Why involve Roma in all of this?" Chapter 5. I turned my head to look at Roma, and we exchanged a knowing glance. Even if Roma isn't my biological daughter, she is still the only child under my name, Helen. All of my assets, properties, stocks, funds, including 20% of the family's business shares, will all go to her. Roma, with that in mind, would you rather stay with me or with your father and this uncertain mother? My little girl caught on quickly, her eyes darting about as she instantly understood my meaning. She immediately threw herself into my arms, her small face rubbing against my arm, and cheerfully said, "Dad now has a brother and the inheritance won't go to me. Of course I'll stay with Mom." Good girl. She directly spoke the objective out loud, just as I had taught her. When Ava heard I was willing to leave all my assets to Roma, her eyes lit up brighter than a 1,000-watt light bulb. She knew I had many assets. My wealth in gold, jewelry, and real estate alone wasn't a small sum. Not to mention that 20% of the shares, it was like a mountain of gold. Greed, blatant greed, was written all over her face without a hint of disguise. She leaned over to Lucas's ear and began whispering. When the old man passed away, to maintain a balance, he split his 60% of the group's shares into 4 parts. 20% to Helen, 20% to the old lady, 10% to Roma, and you only got 10%. If Helen transfers her shares to Roma, and we later convince Roma to give hers to us, you'll have 40%. The immediate priority is to get Helen to relinquish her shares and assets. Get her out with nothing and then bring Roma over to our side. Lucas thought it over and decided Ava was right. He stepped forward, putting on a loving fatherly act for Roma. Roma, your brother is a boy. He can be self-reliant and won't compete with you for the inheritance. I'm also willing to leave everything to you. He paused and added a condition. On the condition that you go and do a paternity test with Ava. If it shows that you two are biological mother and daughter, then you must acknowledge Ava as your mother and treat her well. Roma sneaked a glance at me, and I gave her a barely perceptible nod. Fine, Roma agreed immediately, but she also cleverly added a condition of her own. However, before we do the paternity test, both parents must come with me to the notary office and transfer all assets unconditionally to my name. I cheered inwardly. This child was truly sharp. What's in your hands is what's real. Never trust verbal promises. Chapter 6. At this point, the relatives who enjoyed stirring up trouble were ecstatic. Whatever Ava could think of, they could think of too. They were rubbing their hands together in anticipation as if countless treasures were now within their reach. Lucas had no clue about business management. If the company was under his name, wouldn't they be able to manipulate things however they pleased? Great, great. This is how it should be. One relative cheered. I'll contact someone from the notary office right away. Another relative pulled out his phone and started dialing. The group was busy acting as if they were organizing a celebration. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, watching the chaos, tried to dissuade me out of concern. My dear child, are you sure you want to go ahead with this transfer? You might want to reconsider. I smiled and shook my head, reassuring her. Don't worry, Mom. I know what I'm doing. My mother-in-law always knew how capable I was. Seeing my calm demeanor, she decided not to press further. With their help, all the assets under my and Lucas's names, except for $50,000 each for living expenses, were transferred to Roma's name. In the notary office, Lucas and Ava gazed lovingly at Roma. They seemed to see a future where they would be leading the family business and wielding power, smiling brightly. I looked at them, lost in their daydream, and then at my daughter who had just become a billionaire. I smiled as well. But Lucas losing his wealth wasn't enough. I needed to strip Ava down as well. Ava, didn't you say you loved Roma? Shouldn't you show it? I spoke casually, my gaze passing over Ava's carefully crafted no-makeup look. I've spent millions raising Roma for you over the past 20 years. I don't need compensation from you. Just give the money to Roma. After all, I love her more than anything. Roma quickly caught on and added, Auntie, you've been with my dad for over 20 years, so you must have saved a few million, right? Since we're at the notary office already, why don't you prove your loyalty to me? Otherwise, I might doubt whether you truly love me, and think you're only claiming me for the company behind me. Ava's face stiffened, caught between a rock and a hard place. If she handed over the money, it would hurt. If she didn't, Roma would question her motives for reconnecting. You can't catch a wolf without sacrificing a lamb. Gritting her teeth, Ava pulled a card from her bag and handed it to Roma. Roma dear, of course Mommy loves you. Here's $5 million. It's what I've saved for over 10 years. Roma took the card without hesitation and called the notary personnel over to formalize the transfer immediately. Ava stood beside her, smiling, though her smile was twisted as if she were being carved up alive. Chapter 7. The testing facility was chosen by Lucas. He was afraid I would manipulate something, so he picked the most authoritative national-level forensic institute. I snorted, thinking he was so clever. After the staff at the testing center collected blood samples from Ava, Roma, and me, I asked them to also collect Lucas's blood for the test. Lucas looked at me in disbelief. Helen, are you crazy? There's no doubt that Roma is my child. I smirked maliciously. Since we're here, let's do it all. Roma, though she didn't understand why I was doing this, knew that I must have a reason, so she threw a tantrum, demanding that Lucas also do a paternity test. Now Lucas treated Roma like a precious treasure, so he agreed to her request. As we left the testing facility, Ava's son Paul showed up late with a bouquet of flowers. Sister, he called affectionately to Roma, offering her the flowers and attempting to hug her. Roma's expression showed utter disgust, as if she had swallowed a fly, and she pushed him away. Don't touch me. This kid was half a head taller than Roma and looked presentable. Roma, he's your brother, Ava quickly urged. A family should love and support each other. Roma rolled her eyes. The test results aren't out yet, so don't start acknowledging family ties. I'll leave you to your family bonding, I said coldly. Lucas, let's go to the Civil Affairs office now to get the divorce certificate. Since neither of us had any assets to our names nor had to negotiate child custody, Lucas and I didn't need to sign any divorce agreement. We simply went to the Civil Affairs office and obtained the divorce certificate. Ava's eyes widened with excitement, clearly not expecting that we would divorce so quickly. She thought I would hold on and refuse. But Roma stood firmly by my side, and seeing how close we were, Ava became envious. After Roma went to the parking lot to get the car, Ava finally seized the opportunity to taunt me. Helen, Lucas never loved you. Do you know why Roma is named Roma? Because I chose that name. Lucas hugged Ava with a proud look on his face. When the paternity test results come out, Roma will naturally come back to us. Paul also dropped his act of being meek in front of Roma and became arrogant. Now all the money is my sister's. Once the paternity test results are out, you can expect to end up on the streets. I couldn't be bothered to respond to their foolish taunts. Lucas, not getting any reaction from me, thought everything was in his grasp and showed his true colors. You've controlled the family business for so many years. Now it's my turn to be in charge. So you really were using Roma to get your hands on the family business? I sneered. And what if I was? Lucas said carelessly. Now that all the assets are transferred to Roma, we just have to wait for the paternity test results. Then I'll be the master of the company. Well, I'll wait and see if you're that lucky, I replied, my gaze turning icy. Chapter 8. They thought they had it all figured out, believing victory was within their grasp. But what they didn't know was that they never stood a chance from the very beginning. While I was in the middle of handing over my responsibilities at the company, Paul showed up and kicked out the general manager, grandly settling himself into the leather chair, crossing his legs and proclaiming that the chairwoman was his sister and he was the rightful general manager. Everyone heard this and didn't dare stop him, but I wasn't afraid to put him in his place. Throw him out for me. A few security guards immediately stepped forward to grab Paul. You dare touch me? Paul shot up, pointing his finger at the security guards' faces, shouting, My sister is the chairwoman. I'm her biological brother. You lackeys tried touching me. He continued to hurl insults at me. You bitch, you've already been kicked out of the family. You have no right to command the company employees. He was yelling, shoving the guards, trying to come at me. What utter lawlessness. Just then Roma arrived. What's going on here? She asked coldly. Sister, you're just in time. Paul immediately switched to a pitiful expression. This old woman wants to have the guards throw me out. This is a company, not a place for you to cause trouble, Roma said coldly, staring at him. Also, I'm not your sister. Roma, how can you talk to your brother like that? Ava arrived as well. You two are real siblings. In the future, your brother will help you manage company affairs. Without family support as a woman, you'll be taken advantage of, Roma sneered. Throw them both out. Seeing that being soft wouldn't work, Ava began to act out, refusing to let the guards touch her. I'm the wife of Lucas, the heir to this company, and Roma's real mother. This company is mine too. I sneered. Throw them out. Don't dirty the company. The security guards, finally understanding who was in charge, lifted the two oblivious individuals and dragged them out. Ava continued to yell, Helen, just you wait. When the test results come out tomorrow, I'll make you beg on your knees for me to give you a meal. I looked at her disheveled state and said calmly, Don't worry, I've been waiting for the results all along. Chapter 9. Finally, the day Ava had been eagerly waiting for arrived. I made sure to get up early, dress up nicely, and put on some light makeup. After all, I needed to look my best to watch Ava's face when she got slapped with reality. Aside from my mother-in-law, Lucas once again invited all the relatives to the Forensic Institute for the big reveal, probably hoping that more people could laugh at my expense. How naive. He wanted everyone to laugh at me, but in the end he was the biggest joke. Before seeing the results, I smiled mockingly and asked Lucas, "This is the Forensic Institute you personally chose. You won't object to the results, right?" Lucas straightened up and said confidently, "Of course not. I always keep my word." I almost burst out laughing. He truly wouldn't believe it until he saw it with his own eyes. The examiner hadn't returned yet, and Ava began her performance. She clung to Lucas's arm affectionately, resting her head on his shoulder, speaking in a soft, sweet voice. "Lucas, once the results are out, our family of 3 will finally be reunited." As she spoke, she shot me a provocative look. I ignored her completely, turning to look at Roma. Sure enough, Roma also had a cold expression, ignoring Ava's little act. Ava hit a wall and felt a bit awkward, but she quickly adjusted her expression and turned to Roma. "I'll be your mother from now on, so if there's anything you want, just let me know." As she spoke, she pulled out a delicate little box from her bag and handed it to Roma. "This is a necklace I bought for you. A gift to celebrate our reunion. Do you like it?" Roma didn't even glance at it, coldly replying, "I don't need it." The smile on Ava's face froze. Lucas hurried to smooth things over. "Roma, your mother means well." "I don't need her goodwill," Roma interrupted him. "I only have one mother, and that's Helen." A surge of warmth filled my heart. My daughter would always stand by my side. At that moment, the examiner returned with 3 copies of the results. Ava, Lucas, and Paul immediately perked up, their eyes fixed on the files in the examiner's hands. Their expressions were like hungry wolves staring at their prey. They looked at me triumphantly, as if I was about to be completely humiliated, and they would finally enjoy wealth and glory. I could hardly hold back my laughter. The examiner opened the envelope and Ava's breathing became ragged. Her bright red lacquered nails dug tightly into Lucas's arm. Lucas was shaking with excitement. His face flushed as if he was about to explode at any moment. He was muttering, "Roma, we can finally be together as a real family." I noticed that the way he looked at me was as if I was a defeated stray dog. Ava was even more exaggerated, her body trembling slightly. "Roma, Mommy has finally proven herself." Paul the idiot couldn't wait any longer and walked right up to Roma. "Sister, when we get back to the company, you need to appoint me as the general manager right away. I'm your real brother, and only I will truly help you." He said it with such an air of entitlement, as if Roma was guaranteed to help him and the position of general manager was already in his pocket. I watched the 3 of them making fools of themselves, sneering inwardly. Until the last moment, none of them knew who the real clowns were. Chapter 10. The examiner cleared his throat and began reading the results. According to the DNA comparison, Ms. Ava and Ms. Roma. He paused deliberately, making Ava and Lucas even more tense, stretching their necks as if they wanted to press their ears right up to the examiner's mouth. The surrounding relatives also held their breath, each with different expressions, waiting to see me humiliated. Are not related as mother and daughter. The air seemed to freeze. Lucas's eyes widened and he screamed hysterically as if he had lost his mind. "Impossible! There must be a mistake." Ava also shrieked. "How can this be? How could there be no relationship?" Her face instantly turned pale, and her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide her horror. "Are you farsighted or something? Let me see." Paul snatched the report and after seeing the result, he collapsed onto the chair mumbling, "How could this happen?" I asked the examiner to read my and Roma's paternity test report. According to the DNA comparison, Helen and Roma are biological mother and daughter. There was an uproar all around. Lucas looked like he had been struck by lightning. "Impossible," he muttered in shock. Seeing the confused expressions on Roma, my mother-in-law, and the others, I kindly explained, "I saw you messing around back then, so I switched my egg back." As I watched his face turn increasingly ugly, I continued, Oh, and by the way, I also swapped your sperm for that of my ex-boyfriend. The entire room fell into stunned silence, and my mother-in-law jerked her head up, her cloudy eyes filled with shock. I looked at Lucas and said word by word, Roma is not your child. Congratulations, you've been raising someone else's kid for over 20 years. Hearing this, Lucas snatched his and Roma's paternity report from the examiner. After seeing the result, his eyes turned bloodshot, and he lunged at me shouting, "You bitch!" The bodyguard behind me reacted quickly, grabbing him and forcefully shoving him to the ground. I looked down at him from above, my gaze icy cold. Hearing the news, Ava seemed to grab onto it like a lifeline, throwing herself at Lucas and screeching, "Lucas, if Roma isn't yours, then she's not part of your family. The only heir can be Paul." Her bright red nails were nearly digging into Lucas's flesh. Lucas, realizing the situation, suddenly raised his head, his eyes flashing with cruelty. He stumbled to his feet and walked over to my mother-in-law, who was still too stunned to react. "Mom, everyone, you all heard and saw it. Roma is not my child." He pointed at me, spitting in anger, his voice hoarse as he shouted, "She's the bastard of Helen and her ex-boyfriend. We can't let the family's assets fall into the hands of an outsider." Ava and Paul joined in, shouting, "Yes, kick that little bitch Roma out. The family heir can only be me." Chapter 11. The usually composed my mother-in-law had already recovered from the shock. She completely ignored Lucas, her expression complex and difficult for others to understand. With an uncharacteristic vulnerability, her voice trembling, she asked me, "Helen, is it true?" Seeing her like that, tears suddenly welled up in my eyes. "It's true." Lucas, dissatisfied with my mother-in-law's reaction, shook her hand. "Mom, hurry, announce that Paul is the heir." My mother-in-law, now collected, brushed his hand aside and asked calmly, "Do you know who Helen's ex-boyfriend is?" Lucas scratched his head in frustration. "What does it matter who it is? Roma isn't part of our family anyway. Helen's ex-boyfriend was your older brother, Oliver. So Roma is still part of the family, and is the only rightful heir." My mother-in-law's words landed like a bomb among the crowd. The family tradition back then, as everyone knows, only allows legitimate children of the first branch to inherit the family's business. Only if that branch ceases to exist do illegitimate children have a claim. My mother-in-law fixed a sharp gaze on Lucas, warning him, "After Oliver's accident, the old man had no choice but to bring you back. Lucas, do not forget your place." Lucas's face turned deathly pale as he was reminded of his true status by my mother-in-law. Lucas was named by his mother, a woman who was never truly acknowledged. When my father-in-law was young, he was tricked by a secretary, and Lucas was born from that. But the family valued pure bloodlines, and not just any child could enter the family. The only child he acknowledged was Oliver, born to him and my mother-in-law, who came from an educated family. Apart from paying child support, my father-in-law never looked at Lucas. But fate was unpredictable, and the heir that my father-in-law had carefully nurtured, Oliver, had an accident while inspecting a company site, which left him in a vegetative state. With no other choice, my father-in-law turned his attention to Lucas. He proposed a condition. If Lucas wanted to return to the family, he had to marry me, as my father had saved my father-in-law's life. Lucas had no affection for me and had always loved his dream girl, so he was unwilling to marry me. However, he was also well aware of the benefits of returning to the family, so when he noticed I seemed to admire him, he agreed to marry me. Ava initially looked down on Lucas, who was penniless. But when he suddenly became the son of a wealthy family, she agreed to be his mistress. Lucas, to be fair, remained devoted to Ava. The reason we did IVF, apart from his oligospermia, was because he wanted to remain faithful to Ava and wouldn't touch me at all. The two of them thought they would wait until my father-in-law passed away to take over the family estate, but they didn't expect that he would have one final trick up his sleeve. He split his shares into 4 parts, ensuring that we would counterbalance each other, and appointed me as the chairwoman of the group, barring Lucas from taking any position in the company. That's why Lucas could only rely on annual dividends from his shares, and he remained bitter all these years without being able to gain control. I don't believe Roma is my brother's child. Why should we just accept Helen's word for it? Lucas was still making his last desperate attempt. Chapter 12. I looked at him with a mocking smile and pulled another paternity report from my bag. This is the paternity test report between Roma and Oliver. I opened the report and displayed it to everyone. If you still don't believe it, that's fine. Oliver is lying in a nursing home and Roma is right here. We can request a national-level testing agency to conduct a new on-site sampling and verification. Roma is of the family bloodline. I believe everyone will be convinced. Ava and her son were dumbfounded. They had never imagined that Roma was actually Oliver's child. My mother-in-law appeared as calm and composed as ever, but there was a fleeting glimmer of tears in her eyes. The relatives began murmuring amongst themselves. So Roma is Oliver's child? That means Roma is the rightful heir of the family. Looks like Lucas, the illegitimate son, has no chance of taking over the family's wealth. Their eyes, now filled with disdain, turned towards Lucas. Lucas looked like all the energy had been drained from him. He collapsed to the ground, his eyes vacant. Not only did he fail to make Roma acknowledge Ava, but he had also given her all the assets. Ava and her son looked just as deflated, like wilting eggplants. The relatives had seen enough to understand that Lucas was no match for me. There was no benefit in following Lucas, and so they all got up and left in a hurry. Lucas stared at me, and after a moment of thought, as if swallowing his pride, he got up and walked over to me with a flattering expression. "Helen, I know you love me. You're just mad at me for fooling around outside, aren't you? I promise I'll break things off with Ava. Please let me come back home." I looked at him, filled with pity, and slowly spoke. "Lucas, you're wrong. I never loved you." His face instantly turned pale. "You? What did you say?" His lips trembled. "Then why? Why did you always gaze at me so intently? And why were you so insistent on marrying me?" I explained coldly. "I looked at you because you resembled Oliver. Seeing your face was a small comfort. I married you to protect Oliver's family legacy. You became the substitute young master after Oliver's accident, and I needed the title of daughter-in-law to gain entry into the family business and keep the collateral branches from seizing power. You must be wondering why Oliver was my ex-boyfriend, why my father-in-law would rather entrust me with the company than you, his biological son, and why my mother-in-law has treated me like a daughter all these years. You weren't around as a child, so you wouldn't know. Even though I grew up in the countryside, my father-in-law brought me here every summer and winter break as a token of gratitude for my father's life-saving help. Oliver and I grew up together and were already in love. My mother-in-law treated me like her own daughter, and my father-in-law raised me to be Oliver's supportive partner, giving me the same elite education as him." I laughed heartily as if watching a fool. "It's ridiculous that you thought I was just a country girl who climbed her way into a rich family because of my father's favor. And even more foolish that you thought I loved you." Chapter 13. Lucas stood there as if struck by lightning, frozen in place. He had always believed that I loved him deeply, but now he realized that he was nothing more than a pitiful stand-in. Everything he had was built upon a lie, and now that lie has been exposed, he had nothing left. Lucas was completely broken. We had all been playing a role, acting for 25 years. Now that the play was over, it was time for the curtain to fall. I instructed the housekeeper to pack Lucas's things and throw him out of the house. "Mom, I recently collaborated on a project with a foreign medical institution. It's about stimulating neural activity in coma patients to promote awakening." Then my mother-in-law suddenly looked up, a spark of hope igniting in her eyes. "Are you saying?" I nodded. "Oliver has already undergone several treatment sessions, and his brainwave activity is very strong. The doctors say he will wake up soon." My mother-in-law was overjoyed, tears streaming down her face. "Oliver, my Oliver." Meanwhile, Lucas, having been thrown out of the house, stumbled down the street like a stray dog. 25 years of false prosperity had collapsed in an instant. He returned to the apartment he had once bought for Ava, but Ava wasn't exactly welcoming. "It's all your fault. Now we have nothing." Lucas turned sharply, his eyes bloodshot. "My fault? If you hadn't swapped the eggs back then, would we be in this situation?" Ava was stunned. She hadn't expected Lucas to place all the blame on her. You agreed back then too." Lucas grabbed her arm violently, his grip frightening. "Shut up. What's the point of talking about it now? We're broke. Do you understand? How are we supposed to live on just 50,000? Ava struggled, wrenching her arm free. Then, what do? We can't just go get regular jobs, can we? Lucas let go, defeated. Exactly what now? He was used to a life of luxury, used to being adored by everyone. Now he had nothing. Suddenly, Ava remembered something. 500,000. Roma still has the 500,000 I gave her. Lucas's eyes lit up. Let's go. Let's find Roma. The two of them stumbled their way to Roma's apartment. They rang the doorbell for what seemed like forever before Roma slowly opened the door. Seeing them there was no surprise on her face. What are you doing here? Ava pushed Roma aside and barged into the room. Give me my money back. Roma sneered. Why should I? Ava pointed at Roma, trembling with rage. That money is mine. Roma walked over to the sofa, sat down and crossed her legs. Lady, that 500,000 was officially notarized as an unconditional gift to me. So I don't need to give it back to you. Ava's vision went dark. You? She pointed at Roma, stammering but unable to form a complete sentence. Suddenly, a sharp pain gripped her chest, her vision went black and she collapsed. Lucas was terrified. Ava! Ava! He rushed over, holding Ava and screaming desperately. Roma watched the scene and, out of a sense of decency, called 911. Then, as if nothing had happened, she went back to reading her book. Chapter 14. Lucas and Ava blamed each other after failing to get the money. When the 50,000 ran out, Lucas had no money left. Ava wasn't about to spend the only tens of thousands she had left to support Lucas, so she pushed him to find a job or else she'd kick him out as well. Later, I kindly made a call to a headhunter and arranged a job for Lucas. Some time after that, I invited Roma to join me for dinner. On the way to the restaurant, I was humming a tune. Roma asked me why I was so happy. I said it was because there was a good show coming up. In the private room on the second floor of the open kitchen restaurant, Roma watched through the transparent glass. She saw Lucas, who had never lifted a finger for domestic work, now dressed in a chef's uniform cooking at the restaurant downstairs. She raised an eyebrow at me. Is that it? Of course not, just keep watching. I smiled and told her to be patient. A moment later, we saw Ava enter the restaurant with a handsome man with a nice physique. The two of them were laughing and joking, looking very close. Lucas obviously saw them too, and his expression froze instantly. Ava, what are you doing here? Ava completely ignored him, continuing to flirt with the man. Lucas's voice grew louder. Ava, I'm asking you a question. Ava finally looked up impatiently, glancing at him with disdain. What do you think I'm doing? Obviously, I'm here to eat. Are you blind? Lucas pointed at the man. You and him. Ava suddenly laughed, her laughter full and unrestrained. What's wrong with me and Kevin? Is it bothering you? Lucas's face turned beet red. He is. He's my boyfriend. What? Is that a problem? Lucas stumbled back a few steps. Boyfriend? You actually. Actually what? Ava looked at him with a taunting smile. Let me tell you, Lucas, I've been with Kevin for over 20 years. All the money you gave me, I spent it on him. She paused, then added. And also, Paul is Kevin's son, not yours. The color drained from Lucas's face as if his soul had been sucked out. He stared at Ava, his eyes filled with disbelief and despair. Kevin, standing to the side, let out a mocking laugh. Buddy, there's a whole grassland growing on your head. Lucas felt like his world had completely collapsed. The woman he loved had betrayed him. His son wasn't even his. More than 20 years of effort had all been for nothing but a joke. Then he returned to his workstation, grabbed a knife and rushed back, lunging at Ava like a madman, stabbing her while screaming hysterically. You bitch. You ruined me. You ruined everything. Ava let out a piercing scream, blood instantly staining her clothes red. Chapter 15. Roma watched in horror as the bloody incident unfolded before her eyes while I calmly sipped my tea. The police arrived quickly and took Lucas away. Roma, in a daze, asked me, Mom, was this the show you wanted me to see? I put down the teacup and, with seriousness, taught her, Roma, Today I'm teaching you not to show mercy to your enemies. Lucas and the others tried to take the inheritance. Kicking him out of the house would have been enough. Why be so cruel? Roma didn't understand. Because when your father was injured at the construction site, it wasn't an accident. Lucas was the one who manipulated him into going there. And the out-of-control truck was sabotaged by Ava, who cut the brakes. I tried to stay calm, but my voice still carried hatred. To this day, I can't forget how I felt when I saw Oliver covered in blood. For these 25 years, I wanted to kill Lucas and Ava every single day. But I held back because I wanted them to destroy each other. Lucas's job as a chef was arranged by me, so that he would have easy access to a knife. Ava was lured there by me. Her lover was a club worker, and I had the madam give him 2 vouchers for this restaurant at a fixed time. The seats were right in front of Lucas, so he couldn't avoid seeing them. Ava was taken to the hospital but, in the end, didn't survive. Later, I heard Roma say that Paul, without Ava's money, couldn't sustain himself. He ended up doing the same thing as his real father, working at the club. One time when Roma and her friends went out to have fun, one of her friends even booked him. How ironic. Days passed and life seemed to return to normal. But a phone call from the hospital broke that apparent tranquility. The doctor said that Oliver had woken up. I could hardly believe my ears. After 25 years, he had finally woken up. I took Roma and Grandma to the hospital immediately. In the room, Oliver lay quietly on the bed. His face pale but his eyes clear and lucid. When he saw me, he smiled faintly. "Helen, how have you grown old?" My nose stung and tears began to flow. "You slept for a long time," I choked. "We've all been waiting for you for so long." I pointed to the door where Grandma and Roma were waiting their turn to come in. Oliver's gaze fell on Roma, and he asked who she was. I confessed that she was our daughter, born through IVF. He was stunned for a moment but accepted it calmly, looking at Roma with a touch of affection in his eyes. He asked what our daughter's name was. I answered, "Her name is Roma." Oliver smiled and said softly, "Roma? What a beautiful name."